Inflammation. It's everywhere right now. It's the word people throw around at literally everything like it's the final answer. Your fatigue, oh, it's just inflammation. Your weight gain, inflammation. Your brain fog, it's inflammation. Your joint pain, inflammation, right? Anxiety, it's just inflammation. And listen, I am not saying inflammation isn't real. It absolutely is, and it matters. It is a major piece of the puzzle. But here's the problem. For a lot of people, it's inflammation has become the place they just stop thinking, okay? It becomes this vague catch-all label that sounds like the root cause, but it's usually not the root cause. It's more like, let's just say, smoke, okay? If your house is full of smoke and you stand there just screaming, smoke, smoke, smoke all day long, but at some point, somebody has to ask, well, okay, what's actually burning? Because smoke is a result, okay? Smoke is an output. Smoke is a signal that something deeper is happening behind the walls. And this is where so many of us get stuck in this modern healthcare world that we live in, because conventional medicine is trained to name the leaves on the tree, okay? Remember that analogy? They name the symptoms, they name the diagnoses, they name the labels. And if they can name it, then they can match it with a medication. But when your symptoms don't fit into this neat, simple box, and when you're living in that gray zone where everything feels off, that's when you get told things like, your labs are normal, this is just stress, welcome to midlife, it's anxiety, it's depression, and then you start doubting yourself. Meanwhile, your body is still sending signals, loud and clear, right? Fatigue, cravings, brain fog, that weight that won't budge, mood swings, pain, bloating, sleep that never feels restorative. And today we're going to talk about what inflammation actually is. This is not just the TikTok version. It's just not, okay, just take some turmeric. It's not that, okay? This is the real version. We're going to break down the difference between acute inflammation, that kind that helps you heal, and chronic inflammation, the kind that slowly chips away at your metabolism, your hormones, your brain, and your ability to feel like yourself. And most importantly, I'm going to show you why chronic inflammation is usually not the match, okay? What is the match, okay? It's just the smoke, okay? Chronic inflammation is a smoke screen, basically, okay? And once you understand what's creating it, you stop guessing, you stop spiraling, and you finally start making moves that actually shift the needle. Okay, so let's define what inflammation is in a way that makes more sense. Acute versus chronic, all that kind of stuff, okay? So let's define what it actually means in a way it makes sense to all of us, because inflammation is not automatically bad. Inflammation is not always your enemy. Inflammation is your body's defense system. It's the immune system's job. It's just doing what it's supposed to do. That's acute inflammation. That's the firefighters, okay? Acute inflammation is what happens when you cut yourself or you get an infection or you sprain your ankle. Your body sends immune cells and it ramps up blood flow and it starts repair. It's targeted, it's time limited, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's the kind of inflammation you want, okay? It's how you heal. Then we have chronic inflammation. That is the ember fire, okay? What do I mean by that? What is chronic inflammation? Chronic inflammation is when the immune system, it's staying activated, even when there's no obvious emergency. And this is where my favorite analogy comes in, that chronic inflammation is like an ember fire. It's not this big dramatic blaze. It's not flames that you can see from the street. It's that slow burning heat behind the walls. It's quiet, it's steady, it's destructive. It doesn't look like a crisis, but it's still damaging the structures every single day. And when that ember fire has been burning long enough, it starts showing us as symptoms. That's where that comes in. Brain fog, the pain we get, the joint pains, the weight resistance, the mood swings, the digestive issues, the skin flares, all those things. So yes, people are right when they say that inflammation matters, but here's the key. Chronic inflammation isn't usually the match, okay? It's just the smoke. It's the signal that something is repeatedly triggering the immune system. So I just want to stop a minute and say there's a couple of things I do to objectively measure what's happening, okay? And I also want to talk about why normal can be misleading, okay? This is where I want to talk about 2 labs. These are things I really like to run with people because they can give us clues that something is simmering under the surface even when someone has been told they're fine, okay? The first one is the hsCRP. That is a high sensitivity C-reactive protein. What is this? It is one of the most studied markers we have for systemic inflammation and actually cardiovascular risk. So conventionally, you'll see these categories like, okay, if you're under 1, it's low risk, 1 to 3 is moderate, and over 3 is a higher risk. And even in cardiology, if you're 2 or higher, it is considered a risk enhancing factor in that current guidance. But here's what I'm going to say that might feel a little spicy. Normal is not the same thing. Normal is not the same thing as optimal because the standard reference ranges are often designed to catch disease late, not to help you feel sharp, steady, and resilient now, okay? They wait for disease instead of telling you there's dysfunction happening. So in my world, yes, I want people under a 1, okay? But I personally like to see hsCRP closer down, even less, 0.5 or less, when we're talking about optimal physiology, when our bodies are functioning at their best. It's not because you have to be perfect. I'm never expecting everyone to be perfect, but it's because your body, it's where we try to build resiliency. And if we're trying to get you out of that wired but tired and inflamed and reactive and that not feeling like yourself pattern, I want as little background immune noise as possible, okay? So number 2 is homocysteine, and this is a neurovascular inflammation clue. Homocysteine is another one that I watch really close because it is tied to vascular and neurologic risk, and it can reflect how well your body is running certain things like methylation and those nutrient-dependent pathways. So a lot of conventional reference ranges will say something like, oh yeah, 5 to 15 is typical. It's okay if you're a 10, right, or 11. But historically, high might not get flagged until you're well above that, okay? Some are saying above 15. And older clinical discussions talk about considering treatment at even higher cutoffs, okay? So, but again, I'm not trying to catch disease at the finish line. I'm trying to spot a trend while you're still functional, you're still working, you're still pushing through, you're getting told it's just stress. So that is why I like homocysteine to be around 5, 6-ish, somewhere in there. That's the quiet number. It's a cleaner signal. And when I see it drifting up, especially paired with those things like brain fog and anxiety and fatigue and vascular risk and all those things, my ears really start to perk up because it is important. Homocysteine is a little bit controversial in conventional medicine because lowering it with B vitamins doesn't always translate neatly into reduced cardiovascular events and big trials. And guidelines don't recommend routine screening for everyone. And okay, I'm with that nuance because I'm not using it as a single magic predictor. I'm using it in the way I use most markers, as a clue, just a data point. It's what might be smoldering underneath, okay? So here's a quick recap. What is inflammation? I want you to think about acute inflammation. That's repair mode. It's normal. It's necessary. Chronic inflammation is that slow ember fire, slow damage, constant immune activation. And labs like hsCRP and homocysteine, they're just 2 things that can help us see that the ember fire, it's there and it's burning. But they still don't tell us the most important thing, and that is what's lighting the match, okay? So next we're going to zoom out and use my tree model because this is where people get trapped. They keep treating the smoke, okay? And nobody's hunting down what keeps triggering the alarm, okay? So now that we've defined inflammation and we've established that inflammation is the smoke, let's talk about the framework that helps you actually understand why your body is doing what it's doing, because this is where people get trapped. They keep trying to put out the smoke, but they never step back far enough to see the whole tree. So here's the tree. I want you to picture a big, beautiful tree, and I'm going to tell you something that might change how you see your health forever. Most people are living their entire health journey in the leaves. They're chasing leaves, they're treating leaves, they're medicating leaves, they're Googling leaves at 2 a.m., and the leaves are where symptoms live. fatigue, brain fog, weight gain, anxiety, joint pain, bloating, sleep that doesn't restore, hair thinning, palpitations, mood swings. Those are all leaves, okay? And then the next layer of leaves, this is where the system tries to help, and that is they just put a label on you, okay? These are just diagnosis leaves. Depression, anxiety, IBS, you're just perimenopausal. It might be fibromyalgia. It could be autoimmune something. We're just not sure yet. Just stress, just aging. And listen, sometimes labels can be useful, but when that label becomes the end of the conversation instead of the beginning of curiosity, that's where people start to feel crazy, because you're sitting there and thinking, okay, but why is my body doing this? And too often the system doesn't have a satisfying answer. So let's talk about why conventional care gets stuck. This is the part where I want to be really honest. I was there once. I've practiced inside that model, and I can tell you exactly why it gets stuck because I've lived it. In conventional care, your toolbox is often, well, it's small, okay? You can prescribe a medication. We can recommend another medication to handle the side effects of the first medication. We order basic labs. Oh, they're normal most of the time, right? And if it's outside your lane, guess what? You just get referred out to a specialist and another specialist and another specialist. And again, sometimes that's appropriate. I will never deny anybody a specialty referral, but here's the problem. When symptoms don't fit neatly into that single specialty, nobody owns it. Nobody owns the root cause. You become the complex patient, the difficult patient, the non-compliant patient. It's probably just anxiety patient. Not because doctors are evil, not because they don't care. I cared greatly, okay? But because this system is trained to manage the leaves. That's a hard truth, and I'm sorry to my colleagues out there, but it's just so true. It doesn't always know what to do at the root level, okay? I'm telling you this because I want you to hear it clearly. If you've been dismissed, minimized, or told you're fine while you feel like you're falling apart, you're not crazy. You're in a model that is not designed to explain what's happening before full-blown disease. Now let's add that part that makes the tree analogy actually powerful, because this is where I've been evolving how I teach. There are two kinds of leaves. They're the unhealthy leaves. There are these leaves that we've been talking about. That's our symptoms and diagnoses. They're signals. That's the tree saying something down below is not stable. Okay? Healthy leaves. This is what we actually want. Healthy leaves look like steady energy, a brain that works, healthy weight without obsession, calm mood, emotional steadiness, a passion for life, joy, peace, resilience, capacity, a body that feels like home again. That's the goal. That's the tree we're trying to grow. But the way you get healthy leaves is not by obsessing over the leaves. It's by rebuilding the structure underneath them. So let's talk about the trunk. That's the stability. If the leaves are the symptoms and the outcomes, the trunk is what holds it up. And for me, the trunk is stability. It's the boring stuff. It's not sexy. It changes everything. It's the things that keep your nervous system from living on a hair trigger. That's your sleep rhythms, your blood sugar stability, your hydration, your minerals, your routine meals, movement that supports your body instead of punishing it, downshifting your stress response, because when the trunk is unstable, the whole tree becomes fragile. And then life hits, work stress, family stress, perimenopausal changes, financial pressure, grief, trauma, a random infection, and instead of bending, you break. That's when it's not great, okay? So let's talk about the roots. These are the real drivers of the whole thing. This is the truth. This is the hard part a lot of people don't want to hear, but inflammation lives here, not as a root cause, but as a downstream consequence of what's happening in the roots. The roots are the deeper drivers. That's the metabolic dysfunction, the blood sugar chaos, the hormone loops that are out of sync, that gut dysfunction, immune activation, toxic load, detox bottlenecks, nervous system threat mode and trauma physiology, nutrient deficiencies, and yes, genetic tendencies that change what your body is sensitive to. This is where the match gets lit. This is why don't stop at, it's just inflammation, because inflammation is often what your body does when the roots are under attack. And now resiliency, the tree that can bend without breaking. This is my favorite part because this is the whole point of what I do. Resiliency means your tree can bend without breaking. It doesn't mean you're never going to have stress. It doesn't mean your kids are never going to get sick. It doesn't mean your life is calm 24/7. It means that your roots are deep enough, your trunk is strong enough, and then when the storm hits, you can sway, you can flex, you can recover, and you don't snap. And if you've ever felt like you're snapping lately, emotionally, physically, mentally, it's not a character flaw. There's nothing wrong with you. That is a resilience problem. That's a tree that's been growing on unstable soil with a trunk that's been carrying too much load with roots that haven't been supported. So let's talk about the shift. Let's talk about going from leaf chasing to root building. So here's the difference between my old toolbox and my current toolbox. My old toolbox was, what diagnoses matches this leaf? What medication matches this symptom? What specialist do we send you to next? My new toolbox, what's destabilizing the trunk? What's driving inflammation in the roots? What's keeping your immune system activated? What's draining your resilience? Because when you build the roots and the trunk, the leaves change. Not because you try harder, not because you found the perfect supplement, but because your body finally has the environment that it needs to regulate again. So now that you can see the whole tree, let's talk about what keeps lighting the match, those big drivers that create chronic immune activation and keep that ember fire burning. So you can see the leaves, you see the trunk, and you can see the roots. So here's the big thing I want you thinking about. Again, inflammation is rarely the root cause. It's usually the body's response to something. It's the output. It's the immune system reacting to signals that your body is not safe, it's not stable, it's not supported. It's not just everything is inflammation. It is, okay, what is lighting this match? What is causing the smoke? And there are 5 big matches I see over and over again, especially in midlife women. I don't want to be called midlife, but I am, so I'll just say it. Especially in midlife women who are exhausted, wired but tired, reactive, foggy, inflamed, and just not feeling like themselves, okay? Or ourselves, right? So here we go. I'm not going to overwhelm you with this, but I want to give your brain a little map of this. So let's talk about these matches in the sense of like what's driving this, okay? So driver number 1 is blood sugar chaos. That is metabolic inflammation. This is one that people miss the most because they think, oh, I'm not diabetic. Blood sugar isn't my issue. Nope, I see this all the time. Blood sugar instability, it can look like mid-afternoon crashes. We're waking up tired even after we sleep. We have irritability or anxiety, even if we've eaten or not eaten. We have those intense cravings, especially late in the day. And here's the thing, a weight that won't budge even when we eat pretty healthy. And here's the point. Every time your blood sugar spikes and crashes, spike, crash, your body perceives stress. It's strain. It's stress chemistry that fuels inflammation. So yes, blood sugar chaos can be one of the drivers of all of this. So let's talk about driver number 2. That is sleep debt. Inflammation plus hormone disruption. Sleep is not optional. It's not a luxury. Prioritize your sleep. It's not something you earn just when life calms down. Sleep, it's one of the biggest regulators of immune function, hormone rhythm, blood sugar control, brain cleanup and repair, and emotional steadiness. When sleep is short or inconsistent or unrefreshing, it is like your tree trunk is trying to hold up the entire tree with a crack right down the center. So if you're chasing inflammation fixes and you're only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep, you're basically just mopping up water while the faucet is still running. So let's go on to driver number 3. That is gut dysfunction. This is immune activation. It's stuck on. Your gut is one of the biggest immune interfaces in your whole body. So when there's gut dysfunction, whether it's a permeability issue or dysbiosis, like a microbiome problem, chronic irritation of the gut lining, those food triggers, the poor digestion, your immune system, it can stay activated like it's constantly responding to a threat. And this is why so many people have inflammation and they have symptoms, and it's like bloating, discomfort in the abdomen, skin issues, joint pain, mood changes, brain fog, fatigue that doesn't make sense. If the gut is constantly sending danger signals, inflammation becomes a predictable output. Okay. So let's go to driver number 4. And this is detox bottlenecks, all these modern exposures that we are exposed to. This is where people get real condescending and say, like other doctors that are super narrow-minded, sorry, okay, but your liver, if your liver detoxes and your kidneys detox, like if you have those organs, like you're fine. And I'm like, I agree, you have the organs, but that doesn't mean the system is thriving, because detox is not a magical on-off switch. It's a complex process that requires nutrients, healthy bile flow, gut elimination thing, like all the things have to be there. Proper methylation, that's when we methylate things to get them out, antioxidant capacity, and a load that isn't constantly exceeding your capacity. And if we add in all these modern exposures like endocrine disruptors and chemicals and our ultra processed foods and alcohol, our medications that we're on, and I will say even supplements, sometimes we're on too many supplements or not great quality supplements. What about mold, heavy metals, chronic stress, all that? The liver starts working overtime. And when that burden is high and the pathways are sluggish, that inflammation can rise because the body is essentially saying, we're backed up, we can't keep up, right? So let's go on to driver number 5, and that is a nervous system threat mode. This is a hard one for people. This one is huge because you can be eating clean, you can be taking the supplements, you can be working out and still be inflamed if your nervous system is living like it's under attack. Threat mode, it looks like feeling on edge, waking up already stressed, heart palpitations, being easily overwhelmed, snapping faster than you want to, never really feeling rested, that anxiety that just doesn't really match your life. And sometimes that threat mode is from things like chronic stress load. It could just be our daily life things. It could be internal stress. That's our thoughts and our worries and our pressures and our perfectionism. And even things like unprocessed trauma. Those are big things, right? And chronic inflammation itself creates a feedback loop into your nervous system. So yes, if your nervous system is screaming it's unsafe, inflammation can stay elevated because your body won't fully shift into repair. So let's put all this together for just a minute. When people say inflammation, I want you to hear, yeah, it might just be the smoke, but one or several of these things might be the match. And that could be blood sugar, it could be sleep debt, it could be gut dysfunction, those detox bottlenecks, that nervous system threat mode. And here's the most empowering part. These are not mystery causes. These are patterns, and patterns can be decoded. So now that you've seen these 5 drivers, we're going to talk about why so many people jump straight to the expensive stuff like the supplements and the biohacks and the fancy tools, and why none of that works well if your trunk isn't stable and your roots aren't supported. So I just want to talk about just a minute. I want to talk about what is genetics and epigenetics and why this biohacking generation that we live in, why it sometimes fails and it's not the best thing until the foundations are better. So, okay, I want to teach you more about what's happening under the hood, because this is the part that makes women go, oh my gosh, that's why I feel like this. I want you to understand that the cell is a factory. It's just a factory. I want you to picture every cell in your body as a tiny factory. And your job as a human is basically this. You need your factories to get the supplies in, receive instructions, produce energy and products, take the trash out. That's it. That's the whole game. When your factories are running well, you're going to get the healthy leaves we talked about. That energy we love, the brain that works, the stable mood, the healthy weight, the motivation, the joy, the peace, and the resiliency, where you can bend without breaking. But when your factories aren't running well, you will feel off. You get symptoms. So let's talk about what inflammation does at a cellular level. This is where inflammation stops being that buzzword and it starts being very real, because chronic inflammation can affect the factory in a few ways. Number 1, inflammation can block the factory doors. Your cells have doors. That's the receptors. And that is where the nutrients and the hormones, they dock into that so the signals can be received and the actions can happen. The cell gets the thing in the cell and makes its product in less waste, okay? And when that inflammation is high, it's like the door lock gets sticky. You gotta like jiggle the lock. So you can be doing all the things, eating better, taking the supplements, trying to balance the hormones, and still feel like nothing is landing because the signal isn't being received properly. This is one way people end up with insulin resistance, hormone resistance, leptin resistance, thyroid signaling that doesn't feel effective when your labs look fine, right? Your thyroid's fine. Well, maybe it's not even attaching into the cell receptor, so you're still hypothyroid, even though you're not technically hypothyroid on paper, okay? It's not always that you're just lacking that hormone or that nutrient. It's just that sometimes the factory doors are jammed, like you can't fit the lock and the key, okay? What about number 2? Inflammation damages the wall. That's the cell membrane. The cell membrane is the wall of the factory. It controls what gets in, what stays out, how communication happens. Chronic inflammation and oxidative stress, that's cellular level stress, it can make the membrane less healthy, like less fluid, more irritated. It's almost like the wall is weakened, and that's when the wall is compromised. Nutrient transport, it gets messy, signaling gets messy, waste removal gets messy, and the cell becomes more reactive, more sensitive, and more chaotic. Let's go to number 3. Inflammation disrupts the machinery. That's the mitochondria. That is our powerhouse of the cell, okay? Inside the factory are these little machines that produce energy, and those are your mitochondria. If mitochondria are struggling, everything feels harder. You fatigue faster, your brain gets foggier, your motivation tanks, recovery takes longer, exercise feels like punishment instead of benefit. So when someone tells you, oh, just push through, I'm like, no, if the machinery's broken, pushing harder just creates more stress and more inflammatory waste. Number 4, inflammation increases factory waste. That is what I call oxidative stress, this factory waste. It's these free radicals. Every factory, it's going to produce waste. Your body is designed to handle the waste, but chronic inflammation increases that production of waste. That's the free radicals. That's the oxidative stress. Like the factory's producing more trash than the cleanup crew can remove. And now you have this vicious cycle. More inflammation, more waste, more damage, more inflammation. It's just this horrible cycle. And that's why people get stuck in that metabolic mess loop. They're tired, they're inflamed, they're wired, they're craving, they're foggy, they're reactive, and just not understanding why. So when I say inflammation matters, this is what I mean. Inflammation, it's not just a vibe. Inflammation changes how your cells function. And when your cells can't function, your body feels like it's glitching. I want to talk about epigenetics for just a minute, because this is where people get real weird with me sometimes. Because anytime I mention genetics or epigenetics, someone wants to be like, well, you can't change your DNA. And I'm like, correct, you can't. I'm not trying to change your DNA, but what I'm saying is your genes are not your destiny. Your genes are just mainly like tendencies. They are your blueprint, but your lifestyle, your environment, your stress load, your nutrition, your sleep, that toxin exposure, that gut health, that's the builder of all this. That's what influences how loudly or how quietly certain genes get expressed. So if someone has genetic tendencies towards higher inflammation, weaker detox pathways, poorer insulin sensitivity, more oxidative stress, methylation strain, it doesn't mean they're doomed. It just means we need to be smarter earlier. We need to build resiliency on purpose. And that's why I look at genomics in the context of cell health, because it helps us understand what your body is more sensitive to, what kind of factory support you may need, and why your tree might snap faster in storms that other people seem to handle fine. It's not weakness, it's wiring, and wiring can be supported. So now I want to talk about why biohacking fails when the foundations are missed. This is where I'm going to lovingly call out some people, because we live in a world where the health conversation is basically buy the device, take the supplement, do the protocol, try the trend. And again, some of these are great. I'm not anti-biohacking. I use biohacking, but here's the truth. Biohacking is not a substitute for foundations because no tool can outwork a dysfunctional environment. If your trunk is unstable, remember the sleep is inconsistent, the blood sugar is chaotic, the stress response is constantly activated, then most advanced interventions don't land the way you want them to anyway. It's like trying to upgrade the machinery in a factory that has no power supply, it has jammed doors, it's overflowing with trash, and it has a manager who's constantly pulling the fire alarm. You can install the fanciest equipment, but the factory still doesn't run well. So yes, a wearable can be helpful, okay? Oura rings, I wear an Oura ring. Cold plunges can be helpful. Red light therapy, it can be helpful. Supplements, yes, great. Sometimes they can be helpful. Peptides, IV things, fancy protocol. Sure, sometimes they have their place, but if you haven't stabilized the basics, those tools become expensive distractions. And what I see all the time is we try to optimize our way out of dysregulation what we actually need is stability, because once that stability is in place, the trunk is strong, the roots are supported, then the biohacks will work better. Supplements will work better. Hormone support works better. Detox tools, it all works better. Exercise, your brain, everything's going to work better because the cell factory can actually receive and use what you're giving it. I always like to say sequence beats intensity. It's not just about pushing harder. So that's a whole message, okay? So now you understand the why on a deeper level. Why inflammation disrupts cellular function, cellular dysfunction creates symptoms. Biohacking can't replace that stable foundation. But I want to bring it home right here. I want to give you 3 simple things, simple anchors you can start this week because you don't need to overhaul your entire life to start lowering this overall noise. You just need some traction, okay? So here's some 3 anchors. I just want you to build some momentum here, and these are the kind of moves that lower the noise, it stabilizes the trunk, and starts changing what your immune system has been reacting to. Number 1, protein before caffeine. And I don't have a problem with caffeine. I just want protein first. If you do nothing else this week, do this. I want you to eat protein before you drink coffee. Not because coffee's evil, right? Coffee's fine, right? But because caffeine on an empty system can amplify stress chemistry. It can amplify blood sugar swings and that whole wired but tired loop. So protein first is like telling your body we're safe, hey, we're nourished, we're stable, and then that blood sugar stabilizes and inflammation often has less effect. Number 2, I want you on a consistent sleep window. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it doesn't have to necessarily be 8 hours, but just consistency. I want you to pick a bedtime and a wake time that you can hit most days, like 80% of the week, because your body runs on rhythm. Everything's on a rhythm, and inflammation loves chaos. So you'll be amazed when things start shifting, your cortisol rhythm starts shifting, your circadian rhythm. It stops being forced to just guess what time of day it is, okay? Okay, what about the third one? That is one daily safety signal. This is one people skip because it just sounds too simple. Okay, this can't possibly work, but it's actually one of the most powerful. So every day, give your nervous system a signal that says we are not in danger. And that can be a 10-minute walk outside. It can be 3 minutes of slow breathing. It can just be feet on the ground, sunlight in your eyes, music in the kitchen, music on your way to work, a short stretch session, prayer, gratitude, just being still, whatever is regulating for you. Because if your nervous system stays in threat mode, it keeps just lighting that match and your immune system keeps reacting. These are not just nice ideas. These are foundational inputs that help your body stop acting like it has to survive the day. So what do I want you to remember? Inflammation, it's been this big buzzword, and here's what I want you to take. You're not weak, you're not lacking discipline, you're not just not trying hard enough, and you're not crazy for feeling like your motivation and willpower have disappeared. Because your body is inflamed, underslept, metabolically stressed, and stuck in threat mode. If that's happening, willpower is not going to happen. It's not the solution, but stability is. And this is why I teach resiliency like a tree. When your roots are deep and your trunk is stable, you can bend without breaking. And when the foundations are supported, the leaves change. Not just fewer symptoms, but better outcomes. Steady energy, a clearer brain, a calmer mood, healthier weight, more joy, more peace, and more capacity for life. If today's episode made you feel seen and you're ready to stop guessing, there are 2 ways you can get started working more in depth. And number 1 is you can download our free guide. We'll put the link in the show notes. 9 hidden signs your metabolism is stuck in survival mode. And we'll link that below. It will help you connect the dots between what you're feeling and what might be happening beneath the surface so you can stop blaming yourself and start understanding your body. And the next way you can is you can look into the adrenal optimization test. It gives you real clarity. You see it on paper. I'm going to link that below in the show notes. This is one of my favorite tests because it shows you something most people have never seen before, and that's your cortisol pattern across the day. Better than just one point in the morning, but it shows you all day what your cortisol rhythm is looking like. What is it actually doing? What, and not just, I think my cortisol is high, or I think it's low, whatever. It shows you. It also includes DHEA, which gives you insight into how resilient your system really is. Like, do you even have buffer to buffer cortisol? And the test, it comes with tools, it comes with education to help you understand your results. It has that member portal that walks you through your patterns and what they mean and how to start putting the right foundations in place to support your nervous system, metabolism, and inflammation. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you this. I've never had anyone regret doing this test because it gives people what they've been missing, and that is understanding. They can be a little nicer to themselves. It answers the question, why do I feel so bad even though everyone keeps telling me I'm fine? So check the show notes for these 2 links. We will also put some information about our program that's coming, and that is the Resiliency Reboot. It's a powerful program, working with me more in depth. So we're going to put that down below too. Everything's there for you. If this episode hit home, please share it with a friend, leave a review. I just don't want to tell you, it's just stress. We don't want to hear that anymore. So share this, help us to grow, and we'll see you in the next one.